Welcome back, everyone, to another podcast. This is the Built for Anything audio experience. I'm your host, Hertz, your favorite vegan go-getter. And on this episode, I'm going to talk about this Kalief Browder documentary that I saw on Netflix last night. It has me pretty riled up, and I can't wait to talk to you guys about it. So let's go. Enjoy the show. Well, I tell you, Mother Nature must be really pissed at us because, today in Mexico City, there was an earthquake. I think it was like 7.1, which is pretty bad. Ironically enough, it happened on the anniversary of, I think it said 1958 was when it last happened. So that's just bizarre. But yeah, we've been having some pretty bad Mother Nature's scenarios, hurricanes going on all across the country. They're saying that there's one that's set to hit Puerto Rico, Hurricane Maria. Hurricane Harvey hit most of Texas a couple weeks ago. Wow. My thoughts on that is I feel like, first of all, when these things happen, these natural disasters, there's a lot of money that is pumped into foundations. And unfortunately, it seems like a lot of that money doesn't go towards where it needs to go. Even though when you really think about it, the money that we pay in taxes and all this money that the city and the government takes from us, particularly the federal government, they should be able to have enough money to be able to funnel that and help a lot of these places that are dealing with these situations. But I digress on that. But I also feel like we could do, and I wish we did, do a better job of creating a better infrastructure to handle these type of situations, because it's been happening more than once. We got to really get together and create an infrastructure, a community to just deal with these type of things, right? You got to remember, we are a society that creates planes, ships, and we're going to the moon, and technology is advancing, and what we're able to create is so massive that we can't get some of the brightest people together and say, okay, what do we need to do in these particular areas to prevent, not necessarily prevent, because you can't prevent, the wind and the water, but there are things that you could do as far as the infrastructure, how you build things in order to sustain this type of, natural disasters. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of money that goes into this. And when these situations usually happen, it's almost like another form of genocide, because you have a group of people that end up leaving, and then you have people with money who come in and just build, and they just kind of take over. And it's just, it's unfortunate, but my thoughts go out to all those, that are affected, and just gotta take it one day at a time. But okay, let's get to what this podcast is about. This podcast is about the Kalief Browder documentary. I'm not gonna go too much in depth into it because I really want you guys to check it out. I was someone who wasn't familiar with his story. I had heard a little bit about it in passing, but I noticed it was on my Netflix. And let me tell you something. If you don't got Netflix, I don't know what to tell you. Like I said before, find a friend who has Netflix, ask them for a password. You gotta have Netflix. So, I started watching the game last night, Giants game, and we were off to a terrible start, and it looked like things weren't going to go good. And, I just said, let me turn my attention elsewhere. But, it popped up on my feed on Netflix. And I said, you know what? Let me take a look at this. Because I knew that Jay-Z had some part in this. And so I just said, you know what? It's a 6-part series. And I said, let me just take a look. 6 episodes, I should say. So those of you not familiar, let me try to summarize it. Kalief Browder was, born and raised in Harlem in New York City. And this is a kid who at 16 years old was taken into custody for allegedly or being accused of stealing a backpack. He went through the system and they posted a bail, which I believe they said was $3,000. And his family couldn't make the bail. And he was stuck in Rikers Island. Now, Rikers Island is a place where they basically hold people before they find out whether you're guilty or innocent. Because there are so many people that are there, it's like a waiting list. And so the court system looks at those cases as like the bottom of the barrel. There's no sense of urgency. The lawyers that take up those cases are probably the lowest type of lawyers available because they know that they're going to be representing people who relatively don't have money. In their eyes, they probably feel like everyone there is guilty. So it's a bad situation to be in. And what I learned from the documentary, I'll tell you this is a classic case of being at the wrong place at the wrong time. I remember growing up, my mother would always be cautious of the people that I hung around. And I remember one time I'd tell her, listen, I'm not going to get into any trouble. And she would tell me, it's not you who I'm concerned. I'm concerned about the people around you and them doing the wrong things and you being caught up in it. And it took me a while. Obviously, you're young. You do whatever you want. You think you're invincible. But as you get older, you look back and you say, you know what? That's a real, true statement. And this is a case where obviously he didn't grow up in a 2-parent household. He basically was raised in the system. His mother, I believe, was a drug addict. His father wasn't in the picture. And so he had to find that father figure or that sense of family on the street. And believe me, that happens to a lot of people. I remember growing up and there were just always those group of kids that were always out late night. It didn't matter. You would just wonder damn, do you have family or parents that even care where you are? No. You had that kid that didn't mind spending the night here or spending the night there. It just seemed like nobody was really watching them. And so you do get pulled into the streets because especially gangs, because gangs is a form of, family for a lot of people. And although when you look at the gangs today and what they were originally meant to do back in the day, it was basically where you can organize yourself as a group and just to get certain things done. And obviously, as it kind of went along, gangs started representing the wrong things, a lot of killings, drugs. But for most of those people, they really didn't have a plan B. It was almost like you're part of it or you're just somebody who's getting ran over. You had to just get down with the program. And obviously, you see that this was a kid who, and again, if you watch the documentary, he admits, he definitely was part of the blood gang in Harlem at that time. And, at 16 years old, he could have been causing some mischief. I'm not saying what he got was deserving because it wasn't. But, when you watch the story, he was coming from a party. He was kind of being a bit mischievous. Some guy called the cops, felt like he was going to be robbed or something. And basically he got kind of swept up in it. He got accused of doing something that he claims he didn't do. And even if he did do it, it's a backpack, surely doesn't warrant what he had to go through. The documentary picks up where he ends up going to Rikers at 16, and he spent a lot of time in solitary confinement, which is basically like Guantanamo Bay. It's meant to break you down mentally, and usually people won't last more than 5 days in there. He was in there for consecutive days, 40 days at a time, 100 days at a time. And I think the total was over 300, which is a lot for anybody, let alone someone at 16 years old. Because being in a hole, they like to call it, where basically you're in a box and you don't see no daylight. And I think this is 22 out of 24 hours. After a while, you go insane. You have no human interaction. You got to start, mentally it breaks you down. And it's been proven, medically proven, scientifically proven, that it really stunts the growth of adolescence, but also just anybody. You're not the same when you come out of that. And so he was placed in there because of constant fights that he got into, because he was put in a situation where, if you go in there, you're either part of a gang or you're not. You're either getting extorted or you're getting beat up. And he felt like he had to fight. He had to stand his ground. And he was a small guy. He got into a lot of fights, got jumped a lot. And for those of you not familiar with being jumped, it basically means it's not a fair fight. This could be 4-on-1, 5-on-1, 20-on-1. That's basically being jumped. And, they show a lot of it in the documentary, what he went through. And I'll tell you this, I commend him for standing his ground. I commend anybody for holding down what they believe in and really being one of just many people. Like, I really do believe, like they say in the documentary, 100 people, 99 of those people would have just pled guilty and just left that situation. And so let me back up a bit. What they really wanted for him was to admit to doing this crime. But what they don't tell you, or what you don't realize, is when you admit to these things, you immediately become a felon. So when you go back out in the street, you can't have a regular life. You can't, you're not accepted in society. It's hard for you to get a job. And so you end up resorting back to negative things. You have to rob, you have to steal, you have to sell drugs, or just do jobs that are maybe beneath what it is that you really want to do, because it's just, once they put that stamp on you, it follows you for the rest of your life. So he recognized that, and he refused to admit to it, to something that he didn't do. And so as the documentary progresses, they show you how he, goes to court. You have these judges that could have easily looked at the situation and realized that, does this kid, because if you're 16, 17, 18, you're a teenager, you're still a kid. If you have the teen next to your age, you're a kid. And so any one of them could have really looked at his situation and said, you know what, you could go home, because the case just kept getting pushed back. And so he was stuck in there for 3 years. And so as you fast forward along, eventually he gets out. Now this is the part where I get really, really frustrated, because it's sad enough that you have this system that really doesn't care. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that there are a lot of people that are in Rikers that, I mean, let's just call it what it is. I'm not going to pretend like they're all good people. Just like, don't think everybody in jail is innocent, but everybody in jail isn't guilty either. But there is particularly a stigma around African Americans, Latinos, just being guilty. And so their cases take forever to be handled, and you're just stuck in jail, having to fend for yourself. Your family, they don't have the money to support you, to get you out. It's a tough situation. And even till this day, they tell you that most of the people that are in Rikers are there because they simply can't make bail. And these are bails that might be $900, $1,000. Some people's bail is $100,000, $20,000. I mean, it's a lot. I think even Sandra Bland, when I think about her situation, part of the reason why she was still in jail for those number of days was the fact that she couldn't make bail. And she was reaching out to her family to help her, and they couldn't help her. And so jail is meant to break you down. It's not meant to rehabilitate you. Okay, so here he is now. He comes out of jail, and he's trying to get acclimated to society again. That's like, throwing I'm just making a comparison, like, a wild animal into civilization is just like, they don't know how to react. And so he dealt with a lot of demons, being beaten, tortured, harassed. Listen, that sticks with you. You have, for example, this Michael Bennett situation, right? And he's a football player, plays for the Seattle Seahawks. And a couple of weeks ago, he was at a club in Vegas. This is around the Mayweather-Conor McGregor fight. And he had a run-in with the police. They basically arrested him, and they let him go. And he basically took to social media, and he had basically a press conference. And he was saying how he felt so distraught. And he was, mentally affected by this. And so they're all going to traumatize. That's the word I'm looking for. In life, you are going to have situations and things that happen to you that stick with you, that is traumatizing. So you can only imagine what he had to deal with at a young age. And Michael Bennett is an adult. He's 6'5" or something, 270, 280. I mean, and he's on stage looking shook. So you can only imagine what this kid was going through. But here's the part that really annoys me. What I noticed is you have this lawyer who was everywhere this kid was. And to me, I felt like this guy was there for a lot of attention. Okay? He understood that this is a case that, there's big money involved, especially if they filed the lawsuit. But this is a guy who, it seemed like everywhere this kid went, Kalief went, he was there. You're my lawyer. How about you play the background and you do your job? You see him on the Rosie O'Donnell show. He's just all over the place. Talking for him here, talking for him there. And I understand this kid is dealing with the media, but this guy he's on TV, he's on the news. And I understand you want to bring awareness to the situation, but he seemed entirely too comfortable in front of the camera. And so it's sad because I felt like people were profiting off of him. And when you look at his situation, he came back home. He's with his mom. They live in Harlem. Not the best condition, as you can see just in the documentary. And it's like, if you're doing these media presses and everybody wants to do interviews with you, how about, helping me get out of that situation? He met Jay-Z. Now listen, Jay-Z has a lot of influence. Okay, he came out with an album recently and saying some of the things that people have been saying to particularly Black African Americans or minorities for the longest. He says it, everybody's like, whoa, I need to invest. I need to stop, wasting money on this and stop doing this for attention. And I need to start looking at property and all these things that people been telling you this for a while now. But again, coming from him because he has the influence, people will look at that and consider it better than coming from someone else. And so you have this influence. You're following him around with cameras. You know that once he becomes in the media, it's going to change his life. Once you listen, if Jay-Z comes into your life, shakes your hand, takes a photo with you, or mentions your name in the media, guess what? You're popular now because he just co-signed you. And he knows that. But instead of just doing this documentary, and you know what? I don't know. But I'm looking at the situation and I'm saying, nobody could have said, look, you're in the public eye now. We want to help further your cause. Let's help you get out of this neighborhood. Let's get you the treatment that you need. These are people who have access to these things. But no. And I believe a lot of that money might have went to the lawyer, to handle this case, because he just seemed like he was doing so much more than just being a lawyer. And so when you had all these high profile people meeting him and saying they were so impacted, well, if you're so impacted, how about help this kid get out of his situation? He can't stay in Harlem and have an average life. He can't. His family is struggling. They couldn't bail him out. And so if you're going to write a book about him and put him in the newspaper and everything like that, and really hold him up as an example, help put him in a good situation. I just feel like these are people who, and listen, I'm going to go even further. I don't like to tell people what to do with their money. Let me tell you something. Jay-Z got a building downtown. These are people who got money. You think he couldn't look at that situation and said, look, your mom is in a house that they're still trying to pay for. You know what? Let me help you out. Let's get you a new home. I'm just saying, if you really care like that and you got it like that to give, help put him in a good situation instead of just bringing attention to him and knowing that it's a lot for one person to take and have to go back to the hood. Because that's what happened. It was situations where, he got shot, he got stabbed. Because you got people in the area that are going to say, you know what? You right away, once he decided that he was going to speak out and talk about what he went through in the jail, you got police, you got political figures who was bringing attention to. He has a spotlight on him now. He has a target on him. These celebrities, these people have to know that. That lawyer has to know that that's the case. And you have to put him in a better situation so that way he's not affected like this. But no, they leave him there. He tries to go to school and he's dealing with it because people are looking at him and saying, oh, that's that kid. Which, don't get me wrong, he could have gone to any school, and if they're aware of his situation, it would bring some attention to him. But you could tell this is a kid that didn't want that attention. He just wanted justice. And as the attention started to pile up, he knew, I think a part of him knew that it would come with negative and bad attention too. See, and that's the thing. It's interesting, right? You got people who will do anything for fame. And you got people right now who are famous who did nothing. You got this Cash Me Outside girl who I think just recently signed a deal with, I don't know if it was Atlantic, some record company. And it's like, this kid is what, 15? She's running around smoking cigarettes, hanging with rappers. I mean, no doubt probably having sex left and right. And people are profiting off of her. Where's her parents? Where's the people around her to say, look, you're a kid. Okay, you have this attention, but it's not for the right reasons. So everybody wants this fame, but they don't understand what comes with it. This girl, after a couple of years, once she's discarded, she's always going to be known as this girl who was acting out on TV. And, this kid, with what he went through, and you could see that he was crying out for help. And again, what bothers me is that you have all these people around him who are clearly profiting. Look at this documentary. I want to know how much of this money went towards him. And shortly after he commits suicide, his mother passes away. And, it's interesting because they had this lawsuit going on. And then the mother takes up the lawsuit. Then she passes. And all of a sudden, this lawyer looks like he looks like he doesn't even want to get involved anymore. And he probably doesn't want to get involved because the father is probably the next now to pursue this case and receive this money. And his father's a real piece of work too, because this is a guy who they said worked for MTA and refused to help his son when he was going through that situation. Again, I'm just going according to the documentary. We don't know truly what the dynamics were, but in any event, it's pretty sad that once money pops up, that's when everybody else pops up too. When this kid lost his life, this mother had to go through that knowing that she really couldn't help him the way that she wanted to help him. That's a lot. That's a lot for a mother to take. That's a lot for a father to take if you really care for your child. And if you truly, there was nothing that you could do, that hurts. And so, you could sympathize with her in terms of her pain. And, it's just sad that now here comes this father, this estranged husband who all of a sudden wants to be in the mix and try to capitalize off of it. But this was a huge shining on this broken system that we have. And I'm talking about from the top down. It's not just police, these political figures, these laws that were put in place, to put you in jail. It's just, you feel really, really bad hearing his story, because truth be told, there's a lot of people who are going through that now and was going through that back then. It's just that I think what makes his story a bit more unique is the fact that he really stood his ground, and that there was so much evidence to support his claims. Because anybody who I'm sure is in jail will tell you, how they've been mistreated. I've never been in jail, but I can only imagine, that it's anybody you speak to who has been in jail tell you it's the worst place to be. And so at the end of the day, yes, you are dealing with people who commit crimes and do terrible things and they're in jail. But sometimes, when you see these stories of people who do terrible things and they either get out of jail quick, or even when they're in jail, they're in a much better situation than a lot of other people because they're considered high profile. It's just messed up all around. And I'm glad that, when you watch the documentary, they showed you, these judges and how they basically dropped the ball. They just dropped the ball. They really didn't care about his story. And a lot of it is that I think they're just jaded. They're jaded because their job is to lock people up. And that's where you have to stand back and you got to look at it and say, is this system really designed to help me? Is it really innocent until proven guilty, or guilty until proven innocent? Because when you look at what their job is, even police officers, their job is to uphold the law. It's not to defend you. It's not to protect your rights. It's to defend the law. And so that's why I consistently say we need to focus on the culture as Black people, as African Americans. We need to have a culture where we have a police system in place. We need to have certain people in politics that we place that is there to help our agenda. That we got to start thinking in that capacity. And so, it's just another sad example. But I had to get on here and just speak my mind on it. But it's just sad, man. It's just sad. So I'm gonna leave it here. Thank you for listening. Like I mentioned before, if you're not following me, follow me on YouTube at Built for Anything. Follow the podcast, subscribe. Like I said, I'm going to bring a lot of content like this just to kind of give you my insight into things. I do have some planned interviews on the way, but I really wanted to just share this, story with you guys and kind of give you guys my perspective. All right. So thank you for listening. It's your boy, Built for Anything. Peace and love. Catch you on the next episode.